is Mike Grace. I'm here with Brittany Caraway, former fellow employee and friend who's now living in a different part of China. I'm in Beijing, and you're in?
I'm in Guiyang in Guizhou province.
Not too far from Wuhan.
Oh, yeah. We are one province south.
The title of this, of course, is the China Stories and Conversations in the Time of the Virus. So tell me a little bit about where you came from and how you came to China, and tell the story if you were somewhere else before that or whatever. And then, so just talk a little bit about that for us, will you?
Sure. So in 2012, or I guess it was 2011, I was in San Antonio. I was a student working at a restaurant, and I was hanging out with my friend one day, and he got a phone call about getting a TEFL certificate. And so he starts telling him why he wants it. He wants to go to China, and he was one of my good friends at the time. I was like, well, you know, if you go, what am I going to do? Can I go with you? Yeah, he was like, well, sure. I was like, okay, well, I'll get a TEFL certificate and I'll go too, because I like to travel, and I thought maybe going to China, I would, at least be able to check out the culture there. Absolutely no interest prior to that happening. I didn't know anything about China. I probably couldn't even tell you where Beijing was on a map. But I'm originally from North Texas in Wichita Falls, which is has about 100,000 people in it, but it's still pretty small to me. So the thought of going to another country with millions of people, I thought, yeah, let's do this. So I was in Beijing for a couple of days in 2012. When it was all said and done. We landed in Beijing on Valentine's Day, and it's kind of funny. Side story, we got to a hotel, and they thought that we were a couple, and so they wanted to charge us more for a hotel room, because couples have to go to a hotel room if they want to be intimate, because they all live with their parents. And we're like, oh, no, there's nothing romantically intimate about our relationship. Oh, yeah, we were just terrified. We were terrified to cross the street even, because nobody really follows the rules when it comes to that. So it was like playing Frogger. It was terrifying. I went to Henan province for 3 months. They wouldn't tell me where I was. I don't know why. I tried to get a package sent to me, and the address they gave me, it was wrong, and nobody could find it. So, I was there for 3 months, and then I moved to Beijing afterwards. Stayed there for a year and a half. Uh-huh. I didn't want to do like teaching classrooms and sitting at a cubicle, more hours than not throughout the week. So I tutored. I went all over the city. Yeah. And yeah, I wanted my freedom. I wanted to wake up when I wanted to wake up. And also I didn't have a degree, so I couldn't get a work permit. Oh. So yeah, I finished like half of my school in Texas, and then did a couple of years break in China, and then moved back in the end of 2013. And then the day after I graduated at the end of 2016, I moved back to Beijing. You did an interview with Mark before. Yeah. Mark and I have been friends since I got to Beijing in 2012. So we've been friends for a long time. He called me while I was still at university finishing up, and he was like, hey, we have an opening at my school. It's, it has all these benefits. It sounded great, because you know what it's like when you're about to finish college and you're not sure what kind of job you're going to get or when you're going to get it, right?
Right.
So it was like, yeah, I know Beijing. I loved it before. I'll have a degree like a real degree this time. I bought a fake one before.
Oh, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
A lot of under the table stuff going on. So I thought,
how do you even do that? That's amazing.
that's a really good question. I'm sure those people aren't easy to find anymore.
Yeah, well, there's been a huge crackdown in China too. So they've, like verifying stuff. If you couldn't get a work permit, then I guess maybe you never really fell under the the gaze of the CCP.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I don't know if you heard about this, but you could go to Wadalco back in the day. I don't know about now. And you could just have fake documents printed off for anything you needed. So some places would give student discounts, but you had to show a student ID card. You could go to Wadalco and they would print you a fake student ID card. So
wow. Well,
yeah, you could do all kinds of stuff like that.
I knew that used to be true with driver's licenses for foreigners. They would take them in.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the guys online tells a story about going in and them angling the cameras so that people could walk around, scoot around on the floor, and write all the answers in for you without being seen on the camera. I'm like, that's, and it costs like, I don't know, like, 3,000 kwaiers. It was pretty expensive for that, because that's not what it costs to just go take the test. And so, but it was just this description of some Chinese guy crawling around on the floor in a room full of foreigners, reaching up and just marking off this multiple question test because he'd memorized them all, and then collecting all the tests and issuing everybody their license right then and there.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
It's a really funny story. And it just is, it's so Chinese, it's so angled the camera so that it can't be seen. I think that's hilarious. Some guy crawling around on the floor doing everybody's tests, like 10 people in a room. So you got a call from Mark that the group was hiring, that our school was hiring.
Yeah. And so I bought my plane ticket. I flew out the day after graduation, and I mean, I didn't even wait for Christmas actually, but I was a college student. I didn't have money for presents anyway. So
the perfect out.
I was like, oh, that's so crazy that my flight is before Christmas. I didn't even realize. Anyway, I stayed there for almost 4 years, and then a woman, a parent from my last class, she asked me if I wanted to open a school with her in Guizhou. So I've been doing that since August. And yeah, it's a whole other type of roller coaster trying to figure out how to deal with parents. how to open a business, how to open a brand new school in a place where nobody speaks English. Yeah. I mean, there's not even pinyin everywhere, and the menus don't have pictures. It was like being in Beijing in 2012 and 13 again, because, we didn't have WeChat. We had to go outside and hail a cab down. That was how I practiced my Chinese, was talking to cab drivers and going out and haggling. And now, we can do everything without having to speak a word to anyone, right? Like, you don't have to haggle for food anymore. Like vegetable stands and stuff like that. It's just a set price. And
true. In Beijing, it's much more international, and they're trying to, and the Chinese aren't stupid. They're trying to accommodate. It's the same way the U.S. works. Anybody who wants to do good business, make sure that somebody, like if you're and maybe in your case, you've got more Hispanics. There's just a way to make that work. And it's not a matter of English is the only language we speak,
Yeah. Oh, God.
Although there are Chinese who, they're like, learn Chinese. As a matter of fact, the policeman who arrested us, he was, Mark, of course, spoke fluent Chinese. And he turns to me and he goes, do you speak Chinese in Chinese? And I said, boo, no, 我不会说一点中文. And he said, Han Yu.
Oh, my God.
Bu Zheng Wu.
Oh my God!
And then in English says, "You need to learn to speak Chinese." Like I was an idiot.
Oh my God!
Mark's just standing there going, "Well, yeah, okay, whatever." And no, it's not anything anybody can come to your defense on, because I clearly don't speak enough Chinese to follow the situation. So I don't know. It's just unfortunate and so language wise, it really helps if you speak more Chinese. But the good business people, whether they like you or not, will speak enough English or will have a way to communicate with you. I took my motorcycle in today, and I was able to barely tell him what I wanted, which was a seat and a new rearview mirror. And then we started talking about modifying some stuff. And so, but we did about 3/4 of it through a translator on his phone, so that he could translate himself into English. So it wasn't like he was expecting me to translate something into Chinese. He was accommodating me. And I find that in Beijing a lot more. I don't know what it's like where you are now or what it's like in the provinces, but I do know that Beijing is really accommodating in that sense. So I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I think all of China is really. I've had people that will download a language app in front of me just so they can talk to me. And you know, you hear it all the time. They apologize profusely because they can't speak English. And
they're made to take it in school. So if they all of a sudden, it's like speaking Spanish in the U.S.
Oh yeah,
If you took Spanish in high school, you didn't take German, you didn't take French. If you took Spanish in high school, which if you've taken it and then you run across some guy, who speaks nothing but, and this is say pre-cell phones, right? Now I'd just plug it into an app and we'd be good. But prior to that, of course, the ugly American, you just start talking louder.
Oh my gosh.
Where is the bathroom? And I know.
Oh yeah, louder and slower.
Yeah,
oh,
so now I'm that now I'm that cop who arrested me. You need to learn to speak Chinese. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. So I tell them, I'm like, listen, I'm in your country. I should be able to get, some words across, which I do, but it's funny though, whenever they're talking to me and they, they're like, oh, Ting Budang, she hears, but she can't understand.
Yes.
And so they just keep repeating what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how to say like, oh, could you rephrase that? And so I'll ask another question around it. And they're like, well, there's only one way to say it.
It's such a daunting language. And I made a comment to Mark too. I said, the Chinese speak so fast, and he thought that was funny because I think they think we speak too fast. We're not divided by a common language. We're divided by two completely different cultures, and everybody's wondering why there's anti-Chinese sentiment in the U.S. And I'm like, well, not to the extent that there's any, U.S. sentiment in China, but that's because nobody understands a damn thing about either culture. I've been here, 4 years, and I don't understand anything. I don't understand. Oh, yeah. I don't understand anything. And, it used to really piss me off when our former boss, my boss still, Christina, would say things like, well, it's the Chinese mind you'll never understand. And that feeds, of course, back into the idea that there is a belief that the Western mind can't understand the Chinese. And I'm like, well, no, I don't think that's the case. I think you just don't want to believe we can, because I know there are people who do.
Oh, yeah. Or it's like, well, this is your culture. And that's so interesting because they're like, well, you're in China. You need to be more Chinese, but we're going to treat you like you're an outsider because you are. And we're going to do things that, you should know, but we don't want you to know it.
Yeah.
Or I'm so confused.
Yeah. I'm sorry, say that again.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, I can listen to your words, but I'm going to follow your actions, and that's what I'm going to go off of. And so, I mean, being in this province, I think what I heard last, there were maybe 800 foreigners here out of 3 million people in this city, which is the capital.
Good Lord.
And where I live, it's far from everybody else. So I'm just surrounded by Chinese people all the time. And the only thing I can do is listen to them and, see how they react to everything. So it's helped, but I mean, it's also just bit my mind to
Yeah, yeah.
in so many folds. I just can't. I have to unravel when I come home. I'm like, well, at least my cat understands English. So, but I mean, it's true. I mean, we don't have to learn the language because we have this kind of technology. So
and a buffer. This it happens in the U.S. too, obviously. Because why do you hang out with white people in China? Well, because there's white people in China.
Yeah, and it's like it's something that we can recognize.
Yes,
right?
Yeah,
even
and it's not racism. It's just not racism. It's something entirely different, or it's the kind of most banal racism ever, because it's really not about Chinese suck. It's like comfort food.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, even when we go out, it's like, okay, well, we're still using chopsticks. I mean, we're trying to be a part of this culture, but
because there are situations where you simply just have to be able to say to the cab driver, turn left, turn left and pull over. And that is not something they teach you. They teach you to say, I want to go to, that's, wu chu, etc. But they don't, like any language, it's so silly to say, it's also stupid to say, oh, well, apparently there's, some subtlety involved here.
Yeah.
It's like that old Steve Martin joke. He says, those French, that language is crazy. They have a different word for everything. And it's a really old joke. And, it's so, and the Chinese, and that's the other thing the Chinese do. They really love it when you speak Chinese. And I've gone down and said, can I have some apples in Chinese? And they're like, oh, your Chinese is so good. I go, thank you.
Oh yeah. It's like,
yeah.
It's like ni hao ma. They're like, wow.
Yeah,
your Chinese is so good.
Yeah. And you just go, I'm going to take that because you're being kind. And
if I'm at a grocery store and I'm asking for apples and I use the wrong tone for pinguo, they're like, whoa, like you're speaking Greek, man. Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, there are. I was going to say that earlier too. There are people who just are like they become dog on the gramophone right in front of you. They just turn their head tilted to the side. And they're like, Shema Yisa. Of course, they're not used to hearing it because along with the tones, there's the accent. So it's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It must be a nightmare to listen to us. It's like it's like when the Chinese come to the Chinese people who don't speak English well try to speak English, and you have to really listen because and a lot of it has to do with the way they're taught, right? They're just taught to do it rote, and that assumes that their Chinese teacher in their school isn't giving it to them as with a lot of A's at the end. Green eggs and ham. You just and you have to listen to that really carefully if they're talking quickly, because also they have a tendency to want to, my kids do this all the time, they want to impress you with how well they know it, so they say it really fast. And okay, so just breathe and slow down. You can do that with kids. You can't really do that with the lady at the grocery store. So
the other reason I like living in China, I mean I can't communicate very well with everyone, but I like that my mind is silent all the time.
Oh,
it's when you go, I mean, you haven't been to America in a couple of years, or I guess since you've been here maybe. But yeah, when I go back, we'll go to like a teppanyaki restaurant. I'll go with my mom. And so we'll have to sit at a grill with all of these other strangers. Doesn't bother me, but God, I wish I didn't have to understand what they were saying. It's just the absolute worst. Like they were complaining about the water in our hometown, which is like, it had this new system they brought in, this reverse osmosis. So the water is super clean, but it's coming from like the toilet water, or what am I trying to say?
Oh, they're making gray water into potable water. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was a woman, she was like, oh, well, gosh, I mean, I want to order some water, clearly. I mean, if you've seen her, she hadn't had a glass of water in a few years. She's like, I'd love to have some water, but it probably came from the toilet or something. She's like, I'll just go ahead and have lemonade. And I just died. What are we doing here at this table right now? I don't want to hear conversations from people.
Yeah. When I first got here, Mark was talking about how he got in a fight with a guy who had insulted his girlfriend. And I said, in my horrible sarcasm, which I honestly has been curbed quite a bit since I've been here because nobody gets it. So,
Yeah.
I said, well, that'll teach you to learn Chinese, which he, obviously spoke extremely well even then. And so I think that you're right. There's a kind of comfort in not knowing who's insulting you or who's being, being stupid or who's saying something that's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, you're absolutely.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's just, I was at the shop with my Italian coworker, which, I thought would bring some comfort to my job, having some sort of Westerner around, but It really hasn't. It wasn't her culture that was coming out. It was, she's pretty much fluent in Chinese. She's great. She was like an au pair or something for a Chinese family. And so we were at the shop and I saw this, like how the pens and pencils here are all decked out with glitter. And there's like all kinds of stuff going on to attract kids to, doing their work and stuff like that. Which, is great. I think I wish we had something like that in America. It's like these plain brown pencils and,
plain old yellow number 2s, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So we were looking at them and she looked at it and she asked the guy if it were a pen or a pencil. And I just looked at her and I got so pissed off because... Okay. You could tell if it was a pen or a pencil. Also, that guy doesn't know. And so it was like this 2-minute conversation that didn't need to happen because he's like, oh, well, we'll put you down. Let me see. And he goes, and like they both start writing on a piece of paper. She's like, oh, it's a pencil. And I just thought, God, fuck me. Like, is this what it takes for me to learn the language, to ask questions that I don't need to ask?
Yeah.
It's like, excuse me, is this a cup or a bottle? I'm not sure.
Spend years enveloped in banal conversations just so you can learn a language.
I know. Gosh, it killed me. I was like, let's just go back to the office in silence. I'm so done with this.
Is this a dog or a cat?
Yeah, right. Oh, God. It's like, please stop. Yeah, and it's stuff like that all the time. Now I just can't deal with the conversations. Yeah. And, it helps for me to listen, because maybe it doesn't help my speech much, but I like being able to understand what they're saying. I think we were going to talk about the virus outbreak.
Oh yeah, please.
Right?
I actually was literally just going to switch. So what's your take on what's going on? I'll tell you up front so that you don't feel awkward. I'm a little embarrassed by, and I'm usually not. I'm a little embarrassed by the way Americans are responding, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I want to hear what you think.
Oh, yeah. I agree. I think I heard about it maybe 2 or 3 days before the Spring Festival, which was, I think, for us anyway, it was January 17th. And I had booked plane tickets to the Philippines. You have to hop around islands and stuff like that. So it's kind of a lot of planning if you're going to go down there and you need to have the time to do it. So I was so ready to leave, and I didn't know anything about the SARS virus back in 2004, I guess.
Yeah.
I learned about it when I got back because I was like, gosh, like people are really calm about this. But when I was leaving Manila or even another island, I was looking for face masks, but a week before, like the second week of January, there was a volcano about to erupt. And I was like, no, I'm still going. Because if I die, that's going to be one of the best ways you can go out, right?
Yeah.
Like, how did Brittany die? Oh,
Yeah.
she, you know.
A good story for somebody to tell. Yeah.
Yeah, right. She's walking on a sandbar in the Philippines when a tsunami erupted from the volcano blast. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah, but she was engulfed by a pyroclastic flow.
Yeah, right. Like a shark just came up out of nowhere. And
one of those deaths that you don't have to quibble over, right? No slow dying. Just it's done. I'm over.
Yeah, right. So I was like, no, I'm still going. So I did that for a couple of weeks, and then when I was trying to look for a mask, they were all sold out, and I assumed it was because of the volcano and all of the ash and everything that had gone into Manila and, whatever it was. I tried so hard to block out everything I was hearing about the virus because, lo and behold, all of the other foreigners at the hostels I were staying at were coming from China, like were teachers from China. Mm-hmm. So they were talking about it nonstop in the common areas. I'm like, okay, maybe getting a little nervous. We'll see.
Yeah.
So I get to the airport and everybody has a mask. I don't have one, which I mean, it's like the general surgeon, I think in America, they were like, well, you don't need one unless you have it.
Yeah.
So that, like, I tried to use that to calm my mind. And then I don't know if I told you about this, but I was waiting at the boarding gate on February 2nd, and the plane, all of the passengers from the plane gets off, they're coming out of my gate, and then they just make a big turnaround, and they put up these red ropes between me and my my fellow passengers and the people that had just gotten off, and they all come and they sit there like, what? I'm like, is something wrong?
Yeah.
And I hear this British guy talking to one of the people at the airport, one of those guys. I was like, oh, that's really unfortunate that happened today. I was like, wait, what happened today? What's going on? So I asked, I'm like, what's going on? He says, where are you going? I said, I'm going back to China. That's where I live. And he looks at me and he goes, oh, no, you're not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what do you mean? They're like, the president of the Philippines announced today that nobody is allowed from China and nobody is allowed to go to China. Wow. And I thought, like, okay, well, if that's the case, why are we all still sitting here? This is, all these Chinese people, they're, sleeping in their chairs. They don't even care. Like, but why are we here, though? Because I need to start making moves. I don't want to be in Manila anymore. I want to go home. Yeah. I'm tired of, jumping on buses, planes, boats. Like, I want to go home, and I want to sit on my couch with my cat. That's all I want to do.
Right.
And so we ended up sharing a plane with all of those people that had just come from Guangzhou. And I mean, these are a lot of Filipino passengers also. Oh. It wasn't like Chinese people. It was, most of them, I saw their passport. A lot of them were Filipino. There were, some some Westerners. Mm-hmm. So we all share a plane. We get back to China, and they didn't take our temperature.
Yeah, that probably hadn't kicked in by then.
It hadn't kicked in at the airport, which, I mean, I've heard is a nightmare right now. People are having to stay 2, 3, 4 hours, getting all of their tests and stuff like that. Whatever they're doing, I don't know. But I get into my neighborhood, and it's just dead. They're taking your temperatures at every entrance you get into. You have to wear a mask everywhere. And, I mean, everyone was so calm about it, though. Yeah. And for my first pandemic like this, I thought, oh, well, okay, everything's under control. I feel calm about this. There's nothing wrong that anyone's doing right now. It's just, This is how it is. We know the procedure. And I mean, it's probably, this is going to sound terrible. It's probably the most organized I've seen from the Chinese.
They are.
I was like, they're recording my temperature. They're not just taking it, but I have to write my name down, and they're recording my temperature. I have the police calling every couple of days to make sure that I'm at home. And, they're giggling because they really don't speak any English at all. And just the sweetest people. They're like, oh, you're from Texas. Oh, I went there last year. I'm like, who are you?
Yeah.
I'm like, a policeman in Texas makes me want to shit myself. I get so scared when I see them. Like, they'll come up and just like, their car will be behind mine, and I start sweating. Like my palms are wet. It's the scariest thing because these are like corn-fed dudes, right? And they carry like real guns.
Yeah, true.
And, the police here, they're so innocent, and oh God, I'm not intimidated at all. They're so wonderful.
Well, they save it for, because they tried to intimidate us when they arrested us at the school. The guy comes in, he goes, give me your papers, like some sort of movie villain.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
They saw it from a movie?
I don't know. He just appeared to me to be, all I could see was German Nazis standing in front of me going, papers.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And so he was a nice enough guy, but he saved his, he was trying to intimidate me. And I said, oh, okay. Kind of laugh. I laughed too much. And he goes, give me where's your passport? He was pretty.
Come here, boy.
Yeah, come here, boy. I had to be 10, 15 years older than the guy. Anyway, he was just one of those, they save it, I think. There's you can't really equate the police with, say, things. It's hard to put that in mind and then also think about things like Tiananmen Square and the way they handled that.
Oh yeah.
So you just go, and of course that was and I think maybe you might be right in general too, because as I understand it, that was a separate squad of dudes that was hired especially for that particular situation. But I could be wrong about that.
Yeah. Oh, I imagine. I mean, from the police that sit around or like take naps on the parks and stuff like that during the day.
Yeah.
Those guys are just hanging. But that was, it was the first time I'd ever gone through something like this where they were like, well, we don't know when school's going to open. So after like a week, after a couple of days, I started getting a little scratchy, a little cabin fever because I'd been around so many people. And I was definitely traveling in the Philippines. And then I just get to my apartment. And after a day, I was like, okay, this is good, I think. I messaged my trainer at the gym and asked him when the gym was going to open. He was like, Brittany, like, this is really serious.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, but I've paid a lot of money to lose a little bit of weight, and I don't want that to come back. So you guys, you just spray some shit with alcohol. We'll be fine. Just, I'm like calling everyone. They're like, Brittany, like, we don't know. But, at least a couple of weeks, we'll find out something, maybe. And the whole month of February goes by that, I got comfortable. Yeah. I won't lie. I started doing like online work with my school and another job.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, I did. I panicked a little bit. And this isn't like an American panicking, like, oh gosh, there's no toilet paper.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm here by myself. There's nobody to talk to. There's nobody around anyway, like a physical touch, right? Yeah. I like call my friends and stuff like that to like check in on our mental health because this is a lot different from what Americans are having to experience. And, they'll probably never experience what we've had to go through.
Well, I think maybe they are right now. That kind of, it brings it down to, now I'm starting to see online friends of mine, and one guy was sharing it. He had this, he obviously had some sort of online meeting using something similar to the software we're using now, and it had all the videos up in front of them, and I thought, he goes, this is the new normal. And I'm like, screw you. I've been doing that with my kids for about almost 2 months now. And Americans are just flying off.
Oh, yeah.
And all this crap that was going on with Congress and all this hatred towards, this is like, they're not using it to solve any problems. They're using it to throw mud and point fingers. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on? This is not how we responded to SARS. This is not how we responded even to the flu, of 1918. Americans banded together, and once we figured out what was wrong, we solved the damn problem. And I don't understand why there's so much I don't know. What is it? It's just, there's this blame game going around the United States. This idea of people hoarding toilet paper. I just wanted to, I know some of them.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I wanted to smack them. I'm like, what the hell's the matter with you? Take what you're gonna
my
use.
grandma was a boomer, and right. And so the way she raised my mom and my uncles was to hoard things.
Yeah, they do.
And so I knew I didn't have to ask my mom about those things. She's like, every time I go to her house, she's completely stocked with all the dry and canned goods. It's like, she's going to be fine. She'll find out a way to wipe her ass if she needs to.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
It's more like financial stuff, but at least Americans have, their next door neighbor, or a lot of students are going back to their parents or living with, a boyfriend or a husband or wife or, something for my age, they have like families and everything. But here we all live by ourselves, and we are very far from, our loved ones back in America. So, yeah, I mean, I think Americans are overreacting a little bit when it comes to being alone in their house by themselves. Yeah. And, I mean, that's got to be their biggest problem. If they can't be alone ever, then, I mean, what are they going to do when this virus comes up again? Because it's going to, it's going to mutate, and it's got to be worse than it was this time. I'm embarrassed by how Americans are reacting to this. But I was talking to a friend of mine from Ireland. She was supposed to be coming back a couple of days ago or something. But, China closed its borders. Yeah. So all of her flights were canceled. And I was telling her how angry I was that Americans weren't staying inside or, going out. Like, yeah, but they're social distance. It's like, that's not the point. Yeah. Yeah. And she was like, well, we were all in denial about it for the first week or so. And we totally were. We were like, okay, we'll go to this bar. Like a friend of mine, this is the first week of February when I got back. A friend of mine was moving back to America. Uh-huh. So we had like a little going away party for him at this bar that wasn't supposed to be open. And I think since then the government turned off the water and electricity, so we couldn't have anyone over. But we were in denial about it. And, as you were saying, we're actually pretty close to Hubei, but we've had the lowest recorded cases, right? There was only like 164 confirmed cases and only 2 deaths. Everybody else is recovered. I don't know how that happened, but I say that, and then I'm like, wait, nobody wants to come to this province. That's why it happened.
Yeah, I'm in no man's land.
Yeah, this is like the Nebraska of China, I feel like.
It has its purpose, but it's not visiting. It's not tourism. The city you're in is very beautiful. I've seen pictures of it, so it's a common destination. As far as the actual numbers are concerned, and of course, now they're opening up Wuhan and the whole Hubei province. So I'm wondering how much of this is real. Outside of having to abide by the rules, get my little card with the scan. Does your apartment building make you have a little card?
No.
Yeah. So here in Beijing, they almost immediately, within a few days of the general announcement about Wuhan, they started cordoning off neighborhoods. And so the 2 entrances to my neighborhood, at both ends of an L-shaped road, they blocked the entrances with those security guards, those guys, which they're more sleepy than the cops. And then they put a gate, as it were, in the lobby of my building, and you had to sign up and get show your ID. And this was for everybody, not just me, even Chinese people. And then they gave you a little card and your name handwritten. It couldn't be more makeshift. You show it every time you go into the building. Of course, they know me now. I'm one of maybe 3 foreigners in my building. So, but if you go out and you're out for an extended period of time, they stop you. They take your temperature. They, that sort of thing. So they're still doing that. Outside of that, I haven't run into I don't know anybody sick. You say some people in the U.S. that are, but I don't know anybody who's gotten sick. I don't know anybody who's died. I don't know I've not seen anything here outside of the measures to contain it that show that the state is cracking down like they were said to have in Wuhan. And then, of course, I don't even trust the United States government. Why would I trust the Chinese government?
Oh, yeah, no, not at all.
I always wonder about their numbers, clearly, they're saying there's no new cases in Wuhan. What were they doing that was so special? So I don't, and nobody seems.
Oh yeah. Like where I live in the city, they have all these. I mean, loads of skyscrapers everywhere, and nobody lives there. So, it's like New York City. I mean, there's so many people in such a small area that, it's taken its toll on everybody, right? I mean, it has the most confirmed cases now. But yeah, I mean, they didn't have to crack down so hard where I live, but for other people, they were having breakdowns in the middle of the street.
Yeah. Well,
I was like, no, like we want to get in our furry pajamas and stay at home all day. That sounds absolutely incredible.
After the one time I was confronted, I about going home by a Chinese person, which I didn't think was actually happening either until it happened to me. And here in Beijing, I think it's a little bit more unusual than it would be someplace else. But that's when I posted that thing on WeChat that says I stayed. I just wanted my parents and I just wanted to remind them that people stayed. Your kids are still being taught because a bunch of Americans stayed.
Yeah, and also, James pointed this out. He was saying if we had left at that time, there would have been a huge risk of bringing the virus to America in more numbers, in larger numbers.
True.
And I thought, wow, like that's actually a great way to look at it. Yeah. I stayed because, like, one, I was just tired of traveling. I mean, my body was absolutely dead. Yeah. And with my school being brand new, I wasn't sure what would happen with our salaries. And I mean, I think like a lot of foreigners that come here, we're here to make money. It's great to be able to travel and experience this culture and, everything for what it is. But we're not here to have, a great time with pennies. If I wanted that, I'd go to like Vietnam or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like, I'm here to make money. I'm here to save. And I'm here to think about my future, where in America, I couldn't do that because I was working all the time and I could barely feed myself 3 meals a day. Yeah. I mean, it was like one large meal and that was it. Everything else had to go to like $100 water bill at the end of the month. And I think I've spent $100 in the last 8 months on water. So
oddly, I think maybe they suspended some of that stuff because I think my water bill was due at least a month ago.
Oh yeah. They totally did. But I love that. I love that there were these kind of government subsidies. They were like, okay, well, this is what's going to hurt us the most, and we need to act on it. Yeah. When like in America, they just passed that $1 trillion.
$2 trillion. Yeah.
Yeah. And nobody really knows when they're going to get it. And it was like, wow, like, bills aren't going to stop.
Yeah.
They're not going to stop coming in. I mean, they're freaking out. They're like, well, you're still living, so you still have to pay for all of the basic necessities. Or it's like, here, they're like, well, we need to help our people because our economy relies on it. It depends on it.
Yeah. And oddly enough, that's the big argument now. Now that they've got this bill passed, Trump keeps talking about going back to work by Easter. And
so stupid.
Well, maybe, and yet at the same time, he's got that idea that our economy is as important as lives.
Yeah.
It's really tough to be, I think it's really hard to be American, or at least with the American system of the idea of freedom and individualism is really tough. It's tough to get everybody to step on the boat or to join in and solve.
Oh yeah, to help everyone so that everybody can help you, which is something I love about the culture here. I mean, it's a love-hate relationship. I feel like, if I don't have anything to contribute to society here, then I'm cast off.
Yeah.
Well, and I say that because I reached out to my Chinese friends and only one person offered to talk to me whenever I wanted. Everybody else was like one girl, she didn't talk to me at all. And I was like, well, I guess, we can't do business together. So what's the point of talking?
Yeah.
I thought she was my friend. I thought I could I could at least talk to her when I needed somebody. I needed to hear a human voice for the day, which, I didn't hear. I only heard my own voice for an entire month. My gosh, do I really sound like that? Having out loud conversations with myself more than I already do. I'm like, okay, I'm fine.
Well, it's a really tough road. I know that my whole thing was just the way they immediately responded, Americans and the hoarders and the.
Yeah, where did this idea with toilet paper come from? Because I definitely shit a lot more in China than I ever did in America. So I want to know what people are eating.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that they started to talk about bidets like it was some sort of revelation.
Yeah. Oh God.
Just stop with the.
Oh yeah, I get my best ideas by walking around and just people watching, That's how I come up with conversations.
With yourself.
Yeah, right. And so it's funny, everything that Americans are going through now is everything that we went through in February.
Yeah,
and kind of like a little voice in the back of my head is thinking wow, what were you guys doing when I was panicking over here?
Yeah.
Or, it felt like nobody was listening to what was really happening, because now everyone's like, hey, are you okay? Yeah, I'm in the safest place in the world right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you doing? Are you still going outside having picnics with all of your friends? Yeah. You don't know where they've been, you don't know where the people have been to the places that they've gone to. It's not like you can see this virus. It's not you see symptoms right away. And that's what I was telling people. They were like, well, Brittany, what can I do to, prevent this from happening to me? I'm like, I'm not a doctor. I forgot to mention it. Well, when I mentioned my friend that was supposed to come over from Ireland, and we were talking about how we were in denial.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, we were in denial, but America could see what we were going through. It was on the news. Yeah. They saw everything unfold over here. And I guess I didn't even think it would get so bad in America, because I'm just worried about myself at the moment, which is selfish, but that was the reality of what was happening. And so I can be frustrated with people for not taking this seriously, but at the same time, they had ways to see that this was a big deal in other countries. Why wouldn't it happen in America?
And then I worry too how much I would be a part of it. I know that I saw some friends, some guy published how they were all standing around a campfire and practicing social distancing. Here's what we do while we're in quarantine, and then in parentheses, following social distancing rules. And I'm like, it's not really a quarantine, is it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're all standing around 6 feet apart, breathing the same goddamn air. Stop with the nonsense. Nobody had a mask on. Nobody had gloves on. And they were all younger people. I think I don't know. We have to look at this socially. What is it about that particular generation, people younger than you, that generation, that they think that nothing's going to happen? Are they so devoid of history? Do they not? I don't think they even teach about the 1918 flu anymore.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I learned it in school, but I think I may be part of the last generation that ever even heard of it. And now it's all over the place. People are discussing it, and this is how they blah, 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 blah. I'm like, shut up. First, not quite the same. There was not the medical apparatus anywhere in the world to solve this problem, on top of which there was a war on, and we were shipping troops back and forth across the ocean. And so at 1918, they all went home and spread it all over the damn country. And nobody knew anything about that. Nobody knew that's how it worked. Nobody, and we know this now, and yet we've still got people going out to bars and going to your various places where they're dancing and sweating and, bodily fluids and air and everything else. And I'm just like, oh my God. And now all of a sudden it's spiking in people from ages 7 to 28. You know?
Yeah.
You just go,
Yeah, my mom last week, my mom was like, gosh, Brittany, you know, like all the restaurants are closing.
Yeah.
And I was like, Mom, like, what? Like, I don't understand what?
Yeah.
One of the things, I learned I guess it was in school or something, or maybe also my own experience, but when people are so, like, I want to say kind of poor, honestly, or broke, that they can't see into the future like people with money can, you know. And I mean, what, you're supposed to have like 6 months saved up for a rainy day, right? But when people don't have that, they're not looking into the future with like, oh, well, you know, I can hardly get food on my table tonight. How am I supposed to plan for, you know, a $2,000-$4,000 vacation later on in the year? We're stuck in the present, and it's hard to imagine what the future will be like. So yeah, as your friend's like, oh, well, this is the norm now. It's like, oh, well, it doesn't have to be. Because I knew that China was going to open up again. I didn't know when. You know, I knew that the measures were going to be lifted a little bit and things would sort of get back to normal in a couple of months, I hope.
Because they
had, you know, I saw that. Yeah, they had to. They absolutely had to. And I know that America is the exact same way, but I mean, really, they're in a worse off ship than China is, because it was like 3 million people filed for unemployment benefits last week. And it was like, gosh, like it's really starting to hit, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
I hate that it's taken so long for Americans to see that, but you know, like maybe that's the wake up call that Americans have needed.
There's nobody seems to understand that there are times when there are things you just can't do.
Yeah.
And I think that's just kind of lost on some people, because as Americans, we're very privileged. And I don't mean that in the social justice sense. I mean that in the much larger sense that we've earned a certain amount of that privilege because we have such a strong economy, et cetera. But we also don't have the discipline to keep it. And so,
totally agree. Yeah.
And
oh, yeah. People are like, oh, you know, what are we going to do if the supermarket's closed or there's no food? I'm like, you mean to tell me that you have no food in your house right now, or you just don't know that you can fry a zucchini for dinner? Like,
yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff I learned being in China, was just how to live off just a little bit, because I mean, I have a savings account, but if I wanted to move that money into my checking account and pull that money out, I'm going to be charged for it.
Yeah.
And you know how we are here. I mean, I've haggled over 5 pennies before. You know, like, I'm not paying that for, you know, this shitty bottle of water. You know, that's ridiculous. How do you expect me to pay for that? They're like, okay, Lao Wai, making 10 times more than we do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be a part of your community.
Yeah. You either do want me to understand your culture or you don't. I will say that it's fun to go to places, and a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's fun to go and see just how much they'll try to charge me for stuff. Because So,
or even like the vegetable lady across the street from me, she's been giving me free coriander, and I get off on it. It's like maybe 10 cents, you know, USD.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, I got this free coriander. I'm gonna make all kinds of stuff with this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me do this. This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brittany. I appreciate it, and I thank you again.
Right.
And we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you again soon, I hope. Bye-bye.
Yeah. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.